Right now, somewhere on a highway in Texas, an electric car is running out of charge at 10 at night. The driver isn't looking for gasoline, they're looking for electrons. And in that moment, without realizing it, they become a tiny piece of one of the most ambitious economic experiments of our time, the global race to control the energy that powers the future of transportation. What looks like a simple plastic and metal charger is, in reality, a financial battlefield where governments, corporations, and speculators are betting billions of dollars. And like every gold rush before it, most people only see the shine. Very few understand the mud underneath. Over the past few years, the pitch has been simple and seductive. Buy a piece of land, bolt down a few chargers, plug them into the grid, and watch the money roll in on its own, day after day, with almost no effort. It's the perfect passive income fantasy, the same fantasy that seduced thousands of people back in 1955, when gas stations seemed like a license to print money. But economic history teaches us something uncomfortable. Whenever a new technology promises easy wealth, what's actually being sold is the illusion of simplicity. And behind that illusion, there's almost always a structural trap that only the experts see coming. The numbers on the surface seem to justify the excitement. By the end of 2025, global electric vehicle sales crossed 20 million units in a single year, meaning 1 in every 4 new cars sold on the planet no longer runs on gasoline. In the United Kingdom, more than 1.7 million fully electric vehicles are already on the road. In the United States, the federal government committed $5 billion just to build out public charging infrastructure. These are the kinds of numbers that sound like an unstoppable revolution, the kind that ends up in headlines and convinces investors they're standing in front of the next digital gold mine. But here's where the official narrative splits from operational reality. While governments celebrate adoption statistics, many of the operators who actually installed these chargers are discovering, month after month, that their bank statements don't tell the same triumphant story. Some are genuinely making money. Most are quietly losing it, with no headlines, no press releases, just electricity bills that don't add up and balance sheets slowly sinking. And the difference between those two worlds isn't luck. It's a financial map that almost nobody explains to you before you sign the check. Let's start by dismantling the first big misconception. People think this business sells electricity. It doesn't, not really. The average commercial electricity price in the United States sits around 13 cents per kilowatt hour. If your entire model is buying power at 13 cents and selling it with a razor-thin markup, you will never recover what it cost to build the station in the first place. The math simply doesn't close. It's like trying to pay off a mortgage by selling cups of tap water for a penny each. So what's actually being sold here? The answer has less to do with physics and more to do with human psychology. What's being sold is time, urgency, the feeling of immediate relief. Think about why someone pays $2 for a bottle of water at a gas station when that same water, from the tap, costs almost nothing. They're not buying water. They're buying instant availability at the exact moment they need it. Public fast charging runs on that exact same emotional logic. A driver stranded on a highway isn't thinking about the price of electricity at home. They're thinking about reaching the hotel in 20 minutes. And for that relief, they're willing to pay between 45 and 85 cents per kilowatt hour, sometimes 5 times what the operator originally paid. At its core, this business isn't about watts. It's about being in the right place, at the exact right moment, when someone desperately needs something you control. And here's one of the most unexpected turns in this story. The operators who actually thrive don't rely on a single income stream. They build entire financial ecosystems around one simple charger. Yes, they charge for the energy delivered, but they also charge idle fees to drivers who leave their car parked after charging is finished, blocking the next paying customer. They sell monthly memberships that generate predictable revenue, rain or shine. They partner with coffee shops and convenience stores, understanding that a driver waiting 15 to 45 minutes is, in effect, a captive customer for the business next door. They install advertising screens that generate money with zero marginal cost. They sign contracts with corporate fleets that guarantee fixed monthly income. And in some states, they even sell carbon credits, a government subsidy invisible to the driver but very real on the operator's balance sheet. This layer of complexity already reveals something deeper about how modern infrastructure capitalism really works. There's rarely just one source of profit. The businesses that survive are the ones that learn to monetize every second of human attention, not just the core product. It's the same lesson airports, movie theaters, and even sports stadiums learned long ago. The main attraction is almost never where the real margin lies. But not all chargers are created equal, and this is where capital starts making life or death decisions for these businesses. A level 1 charger, basically a household outlet, adds only a few miles of range per hour and is practically useless for a commercial operation. A level 2 charger, the kind you see at malls and hotels, costs between $7,000 and $15,000 for full installation and works well wherever people park for several hours at a time. But DC fast chargers, the ones promising to fill a battery in under an hour, are an entirely different beast. Installing just one can cost between $80,000 and $250,000. Once you factor in three-phase electrical feeds, trenching, permits, and specialized connections. And ultra-fast chargers, the liquid-cooled systems like the Tesla supercharger stations, can easily exceed $200,000 per unit, especially if the local grid needs upgrading to handle the demand. The economic rule here is brutally simple. The faster the charger, the higher the cost, the greater the potential earnings per session, and the more devastating the consequences when that charger sits idle. It's the central paradox of any high-performance infrastructure. The same speed that generates revenue also amplifies risk when demand doesn't show up on time. And this brings us to one of the most dangerous blind spots for any new investor in this sector. The real cost is never in the visible equipment. It's in everything nobody shows you before you sign the contract. Most existing wiring in commercial properties was never designed to handle multiple fast chargers running simultaneously. That means new transformers, high-capacity copper cabling, entire new electrical panels. And if the local grid lacks spare capacity, extremely common in dense urban areas and along busy highways, the utility company won't upgrade its infrastructure for free. In most states, the developer pays for that upgrade out of their own pocket, and those upgrades alone can add between $15,000 and over $100,000 to the project. That then comes the trenching, cutting through asphalt and concrete at a cost of $75 to $150 per linear foot. Then come the permits, the inspections, the load calculations, the metering certifications. And as if that weren't enough, there's the timing problem. During recent supply chain disruptions, industrial transformers had wait times of up to 65 weeks. That meant investors who had already signed leases and broken ground had to wait more than a full year just to connect their chargers to the grid, while rent, loan payments, and overhead kept quietly piling up month after month, like a slow financial hemorrhage. This points to an uncomfortable truth about investing in any emerging infrastructure. Capital doesn't just compete for profitability, it competes for time. And time lost waiting on bureaucracy and supply chains is, in essence, money destroyed silently, with no headline ever mentioning it. Now picture two identical chargers. Same brand, same power level, same software, same pricing, located just 2 miles apart. One generates solid profits month after month. The other bleeds money non-stop. The only difference is location. And this might be the oldest, most ignored lesson in all of economic history. Location isn't one factor among many, it's the factor that determines everything else. Unlike a traditional gas station, where a driver makes a specific detour to refuel, electric charging happens as a side effect of being somewhere else. The business has to plant itself exactly where people already go, already stay, and already leave their cars unattended for a predictable amount of time. Rest stops are among the most profitable locations in the country right now, because the driver has already stopped, has nowhere else to be for 20 or 30 minutes, and pays without complaint because there's no nearby alternative. In metro areas like Los Angeles, New York, and Miami, fast charger utilization rates already average between 25 and 35%, numbers that finally make the financial math work. Supermarkets also perform exceptionally well, because a typical grocery run lasts 45 to 60 minutes, enough time to charge up to 80% of most vehicle batteries. Major retail chains aggressively expanded their charging networks in 2026 for exactly this reason. The charger doesn't need to be profitable on its own if it attracts a customer who will spend far more inside the store while waiting. But for every success story, there's a quiet warning. A fast charger installed in the middle of a sleepy suburban strip mall, with no anchor tenant and no logical reason to stop, will generate almost no revenue, no matter how modern the equipment is. Technology never compensates for a bad location decision. It never has in any sector, in any economic era. And now we move into a deeper layer of this story, one that reveals something unsettling about how the energy system actually works behind the green headlines. Setting the right price is far more complicated than it looks. Charge too much, and drivers, watching competing stations in real time on their phones, will simply drive to the next network. Charge too little, and you'll never recover your costs. The sweet spot is narrow and constantly shifting based on local competition, the day's electricity costs, and what neighboring businesses are doing. On top of that, for years several states legally barred anyone who wasn't a regulated utility from selling electricity by the kilowatt hour, forcing operators to bill by the minute, a system that unfairly penalized drivers whose cars charged more slowly. Most of those laws have since changed, but the patchwork of state-by-state rules still creates administrative headaches for any operator trying to run a coherent national pricing strategy. This brings us to the quiet heart of the entire business, the metric that actually decides who survives and who collapses: utilization rate. A charger nobody uses earns exactly $0 an hour, but it doesn't cost $0 an hour. The software license keeps running, the cellular connection keeps transmitting, the land lease keeps accruing, the insurance keeps ticking forward. Unlike a gas pump that refuels a car in 4 minutes and is immediately free again, a fast charger occupies the same equipment for 20 to 60 minutes per session. According to industry data, the national average utilization rate for public DC fast chargers in the United States during the second quarter of 2026 was just 15.8%. That means for 20 out of every 24 hours, the average fast charger in the country sits completely idle, generating phantom expenses with no revenue to offset them. The benchmark where a fast charging station genuinely starts producing healthy margins sits between 30 and 50% utilization, a level many stations take years to reach as the local EV fleet grows organically. And just when you think you've grasped the full financial picture, the real time bomb hidden in the fine print of every electricity bill shows up: the demand charge. Commercial utilities don't just bill you for how much energy you consumed during the month. They also bill you based on the peak rate at which you drew that power at any given moment. Specifically, the single busiest 15-minute window of the entire month sets your demand charge for the whole month. One busy afternoon, with several fast chargers running at once, can trigger a demand spike in thousands of dollars in extra charges that apply whether the chargers are busy or idle for the remaining 29 days. According to data from the U.S. Department of Energy, demand charges can represent anywhere from 23 to 85% of total operating costs for a DC fast charging station. A 350 kilowatt charger operating under a $20 per kilowatt monthly demand rate can generate roughly $7,000 a month in demand charges alone before a single kilowatt hour of actual energy cost is even calculated. At low utilization, that fixed cost gets spread across very few real charging sessions, meaning the operator is losing money on nearly every car that plugs in. This reveals something deeply ironic about the entire electric revolution narrative. the fastest chargers, the most technologically impressive ones, are not automatically the most profitable. They require massive grid connections, they trigger devastating demand spikes, and their maintenance costs run substantially higher. A modest level 2 charger at a busy office park, quietly running near full capacity for 6 to 8 hours a day, can generate better long-term returns than an expensive fast charger seeing sporadic use. The flashiest technology doesn't always win. Smart capital understands this. Emotional capital almost never does, and in the middle of all this complexity, one factor emerges that can completely transform a project's financial destiny: government subsidies. In the United States, the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program pays up to 80% of eligible project costs for fast charging stations placed along designated highway corridors. An operator building a 4-charger hub that would otherwise cost $400,000 in total capital can potentially their net out-of-pocket cost to $80,000 by accessing this program. That reduction in upfront capital completely transforms the financial projections. A station that would take 15 years to recover its investment at full cost can recover it in 3 to 4 years after federal grants are applied. On top of that, the Inflation Reduction Act offers an additional 30% tax credit on charging equipment costs for projects in qualifying low-income or non-urban areas. In the United Kingdom, similar schemes cover hundreds of pounds per charging socket installed. The practical implication is clear, and for many investors, painfully late in coming. Operators who understand how to stack federal grants, state programs, utility rebates, and tax credits can deploy stations at a fraction of the unsubsidized cost. Those who simply call a contractor and start building without researching the incentive landscape are competing from a permanent structural disadvantage, often without even realizing it until it's too late. But even after solving for location, pricing, and subsidies, there's a silent enemy that rarely shows up on the initial spreadsheets: physical and reputational wear. These chargers are sophisticated pieces of power electronics, exposed to weather, constant use, and an endless variety of vehicle software systems trying to negotiate with them. Cables get pulled, bent, damaged. Payment terminals malfunction. Software needs constant updates. Cooling systems require specialized maintenance. Vandalism happens. And when a charger goes offline, it's not just revenue that stops, reputational damage begins immediately. Modern EV drivers use apps that share real-time reliability data about every public station in the country. A station with a history of failures accumulates negative reviews that permanently redirect future customers to the competition. Software and connectivity fees, between $15 and $50 per port per month, arrive without fail, whether the charger is busy or completely empty. And here's where the story takes its most revealing turn, the one that separates operators who survive from those who eventually disappear. The most financially resilient charging businesses aren't, at their core, in the business of selling electricity. They're in the business of creating reasons for people to stop, and then capturing the spending that happens while they wait. Retail studies have shown that the simple presence of a working charging station on a property increases local foot traffic by roughly 4% and lifts core retail sales by about 5%. That might sound modest until you apply it to a high-volume supermarket or a massive shopping center. The charger doesn't need to be profitable on its own. The charger is the magnet. Everything else follows. The most ambitious version of this model is the purpose-built charging travel plaza, a category of business that literally didn't exist a decade ago. These aren't parking lots with a few chargers bolted in. They're intentionally designed destinations with ultra-fast charging, coffee shops, food service, clean restrooms, Wi-Fi, and integrated digital advertising. The operator owns both the retail and the charging infrastructure. The electricity becomes the cost of attracting the customer. The coffee, the food, and the advertising are where the real profit lies. By mid-2026, the world's largest supercharger network already had nearly 9,000 fast charging ports in the United States alone, and had begun building exactly this kind of integrated facility at its highest volume locations. And if you really want to understand where the true financial power accumulates in this entire ecosystem, don't look at the chargers. Look at who owns the ground underneath them. Landowners and commercial real estate operators controlling high-traffic sites near highway exits, next to major shopping centers, in dense urban cores, hold the strongest position in the entire industry. Charging network operators need long-term leases on these sites to justify their capital investment. Landowners can negotiate revenue-sharing agreements, escalating rents, or options to take over the charging operation once utilization hits a predictable level. They carry none of the technical risk, none of the maintenance responsibility, none of the exposure to equipment obsolescence. Meanwhile, the companies that build and operate these networks capture the largest share of transaction revenue, but they also carry the entire operational weight. And at the quietest, least discussed level of all sit the software providers, the companies selling the cloud platforms, billing systems, and energy management software every station needs to function. These businesses collect recurring monthly fees per port across tens of thousands of stations. Their costs don't rise when electricity prices spike. Their equipment doesn't break down. And every new station added to the grid automatically adds another line of subscription revenue. Smaller in absolute dollar terms, sure, but the margins in this segment are dramatically higher and far more durable than anywhere else in the ecosystem. To really understand what's at stake, picture two completely different scenarios unfolding at the same time, in the same country, under the exact same technological conditions. In the first, an operator secures land at a busy highway rest stop in a state with strong EV adoption. They install 4 fast chargers at a total cost of $400,000, but access federal subsidies that cut their net investment to $80,000. Their chargers run consistently at 35% utilization, generating between $3,000 and $5,000 a month in charging revenue alone, plus another $1,500 from a small retail kiosk and digital advertising. After annual operating costs of roughly $65,000, they clear about $30,000 a year in profit, recovering their investment in just 2 to 3 years. In the second scenario, an operator installs 2 fast chargers at an isolated site along a secondary road in a market where EV adoption is just getting started. With no subsidies, total cost hits $200,000. Utilization stalls at 12%, close to the national average. At that level, the chargers generate only about $1,800 a month, while demand charges alone eat up $1,400 monthly. Add software, maintenance, insurance, and lease costs, and annual operating expenses exceed $45,000 against annual revenue of roughly $22,000. The result is a loss of over $20,000 a year, with no clear path to profitability unless utilization rises substantially, something the operator doesn't fully control. The difference between these two financial destinies isn't luck, faith in technology, or good environmental intentions. It's location selection, smart subsidy capture, and the early decision to build multiple revenue streams around a single asset. The gap between a good year and a bad year in this business can swing anywhere from $6,000 to $80,000 per station, driven entirely by utilization and demand charges. Which brings us to the bigger question hiding beneath this entire story. What does this actually tell us about how the world's energy future is really being built? The shift from combustion engines to electric vehicles is real, it's not a passing fad. The infrastructure has to be built, and money will be made building it. But as with every economic transformation in history, from 19th century railroads to late 20th century fiber optics, capital will flow disproportionately toward those who understand the hidden mechanics behind the public promise. Everyone else, drawn in only by the headline and the green narrative, will end up quietly financing the education of a market that doesn't forgive naivety. Because at the end of the day, owning an EV charger isn't like owning a vending machine that prints money while you sleep. It's a capital-intensive, operationally demanding infrastructure business, where the margin for error is thin, the hidden costs are enormous, and the difference between success and failure is almost always decided long before the first car ever plugs in. The real question isn't whether the electric revolution is going to happen. It's already happening. The real question is who exactly is walking away with the money, while everyone else just stares at the blinking lights of the charger and thinks they're watching the future.